Hi everyone, Comic Book Reviewer here. This time reviewing on issue 2 of Disney Villains Gaston. Now, as you know, the Disney Villain series gives new different takes as well as explaining where some characters came to be, how their story happened, and how they sort of became the villain in their own story. And one of them is meant to be Disney Villains Gaston, which is meant to feature Gaston in his own series. And let's get on with the story. It starts off, obviously, after issue 1, now that Gaston's been turned into a squirrel. Of course, all the animals that he tried to hunt, maim, kill, and poach are looking for revenge. And this is Gaston thinking he's done nothing wrong, and saying, "Nonsense! What have I ever done to these beasts? Well, you tricked them, and laid scare for them. I mean, these particular beasts." And of course, Gaston thinks he's done nothing wrong. Well, obviously his sidekick, Lafayette, does make a justified point. If you try to hurt people or anything that sort of was in your past, they're not going to go easy on you, and they're going to want revenge. Much like the King Jellyfish with Kevin in SpongeBob. But of course, Gaston is too egocentric to think he's not going to learn anything, and this is Gaston's ego making him think he's the good guy. But of course, they try to avoid a sort of psychopathic bear, try to get up to a tree, but of course fail to see that the animals are going to look for revenge. And of course, the beavers try to cut down the trees, the woodpecker, and of course, they manage to break down the tree. But just as it all seems fine, they end up meeting a deer and ends up kicking the tree. And they end up falling to their potential death. So of course, Gaston tells LeFou to let him go because he's attached to his tail and obviously wants to try and save his own hide. But of course, just as basically LeFou thinks he's all safe, the other animals want revenge on him as well for sort of getting involved with Gaston. And of course, Gaston saying, LeFou is dead. Oh well. Sidekicks are a dozen. I am sure to find one at the next tavern or the poorhouse I pass. So of course, Gaston is too sort of being distracted to see that a hawk is trying to kill him until he now sees what he has to do. And given with Gaston sort of seeing anything as an opportunity, he now understands that he's not just a squirrel, but a flying squirrel. And of course, manages to break away and gets to a sort of small traditional zoo and ends up crashing in. And of course, turns back to human. He thinks it's all just a dream. And of course, he finds out when he does feel threatened and all that, he turns back into a squirrel. And saying, "It wasn't a dream, I have been hexed. But Gaston can turn anything situation to his advantage. Ha ha!
There, where? I swear, a man was sleeping inside the spinny antler cage. A great burly monster of a man. Ha ha!
Oops.
There!
And of course, the guards try to go after him. They realise, obviously, that he's going to be cornered in that. So, of course, Gaston, realising to his advantage to get himself threatened again, turns into a squirrel, and of course, tries to make his getaway. Until he's met by the King's aide, who's found a bit more of a reliable hunter, LeFou. And of course, this is Gaston not wanting to feel humiliated, degraded, as well as being made into a joke, decides to go with him to still salvage what's little left of his reputation. So of course, they decide to find the alchemist after being suggested by the King's aide and have to think a little more strategically. And of course, after they get captured by the alchemist again, saying, "Sorry boys, you clearly haven't learned your lesson." so no one's escaping this time. And this is the story. So I think here I do see what the issue's doing, and the same with issue 1, is making it like a Uno reverso card to the Beast's origin in Beauty and the Beast. The only difference is Beast actually had to learn things the hard way and had to slowly question his actions. Gaston doesn't. He's egocentric, blinded by ambition, greed, and seeing things as an opportunity to salvage his reputation. When Beast does kind of have to see how his behaviour and that affects others, he makes an effort to change. Gaston doesn't see the harm of his actions and never will learn from it. It's a hard truth moral that you are going to learn from your actions, you do question your actions, but when you look at people like Gaston, they don't think they've done anything wrong, they don't question their actions, and never really learn anything from their mistakes. And I think that's something that I think a lot of us had to learn, figure out, or had to see it for ourselves. It's a good story, definitely enjoyable, so it still deserves a thumbs in the middle. Kind of alright, kind of okay, but it's just there to be the Uno Reverso crack mirror version of Beast's origin from Beauty and the Beast. So, comic book reviewer here, signing out.